Welcome to your reintroduction of Bowie's commitment to speak up against biased language. If you're new, Speak Up is the name of tangible strategies for us to use in our community to halt the spread of prejudice and hatred. Last year, each one of our students was trained in these strategies as well. Let's set the criteria for biased language. Biased language includes put-downs, negative labels, and slurs, particularly regarding a person's identity. For example, when a young boy is called girly for crying, someone making a joke that relies on a stereotype, or a Black student being called the N-word. Biased language encompasses a spectrum of words, some that elicit powerful reactions, and others some may dismiss as harmless. Biased language can also be used with ignorance rather than malice. Don't be fooled by the rainbow. This is a pyramid of hate. Remember that the point of this illustration is that each level, as it's normalized, makes the behaviors on the levels above more acceptable. That's why one of our commitments is to intervene every time we encounter acts of bias, even when many see them as subtle or insignificant. It's important to have a plan to address biased language every time we hear it, in the moment. We don't want to send the message that biased language on the lower level on the pyramid of hate is acceptable or normal. So your commitment as an educator is to interrupt bias every time and to prepare responses ready to go so you don't let the moment pass. This means when it comes from students, fellow faculty members, parents, anybody. Another commitment to make is to prepare your students. Teach them about the difference between intent and impact. The way a comment lands on a person supersedes the intent of the person saying them. Teach them about the context of hurtful language. Simply saying, "that's not allowed," can diminish students' understanding of their own power to use words that hurt or help. You want to build a safe community in your classroom where students, no matter their identity, belong. Identify language that is unacceptable and provide alternative ways to interact. Finally, you will model behavior for your students. When they see you interrupt bias every time, they will know that any level of prejudice is not going to stand. They'll also see that when you use the strategies, you don't have to insult someone or cut them down when you intervene. The Speak Up strategies are about repairing your community. The 4 Speak Up strategies are interrupt, question, educate, and echo. You may choose one or a combination of these strategies in any given situation. Let's take a look. Interrupt. When someone makes a biased remark, the first thing that you want to do is address it immediately. Interrupt by saying something like, "that's not okay. That phrase is hurtful. Please don't say that." You might choose to interrupt with a question, or follow up your interruption with a question, such as, "why do you say that? What do you mean by that? Will you tell me more?" This question forces the person who just used biased language to consider the impact of their words. It gives them a chance to evaluate their intentions and the impact of what they said. Also, hopefully, it could give them the opportunity to make amends and to realize that what they just did was harmful. The third strategy is educate. A person that you just questioned might not know the implications of the biased language that they just used. They may even double down on what they just said. You might say, "do you know the history of that word? Let's talk about why that word is so hurtful to some people." If you're not quite sure how to educate this person on the biased language that they just used, you can also say, "let's look up some information about that word together so we can better understand why it is harmful." The 4th strategy is echo. Echoing happens when someone else has interrupted biased language. Echoing helps reinforce the fact that you are in a community of learners that is committed to anti-bias. Echoing reinforces the importance of building your safe space for any person. We know that Speak Up isn't just about classroom management and discipline. Ultimately, Austin ISD prohibits harassment and discrimination of all forms. So, if biased language escalates, we have a policy on our side to hold that person accountable and to ensure the safety of all of our students. Prohibited harassment of a student is defined as physical, verbal, or nonverbal conduct based on the student's race, color, sex, religion, gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation, national origin, disability, age, immigration status, or any other basis prohibited by law that is so severe, persistent, or pervasive that the conduct, 1, affects the student's ability to participate in or benefit from an educational program or activity, or creates an intimidating, threatening, hostile, or offensive educational environment. 2, has the purpose or effect of substantially or unreasonably interfering with the student's academic performance. Or 3, otherwise adversely affects the student's educational opportunities. When we speak up, our hope is that we can build the kind of community that prevents the escalation of biased language. But we know we have a policy on our side when we need to protect our most marginalized students.